spoilers for episode 5 of season 1 of X-Men 97, named Remember It. We're going to talk about all the stuff that has happened up until and including that episode. Now, I said when I started making these, semi-weekly recap videos of X-Men 97, I wasn't going to try to speculate on plot stuff. And let's say two things have changed. One, it is clear that whatever is going on in X-Men the Animated Series is so different from the comics that even knowing certain things doesn't mean they're going to happen the same way, right? So even if you knew who Madeline Pryor was, which I think is, something that a lot of people knew going in, is that there was a clone of Jean Grey who becomes the Goblin Queen, just knowing that does not spoil the episode all that for you, because of how different the adaptation is. Even someone who has read the Inferno storyline would see what happened there and be completely surprised by a lot of it. And then number two, I did not expect the show to set up a secret bad guy or someone who was pulling all of the strings. It didn't feel like it would be 100% straightforward, but I don't know, it just kind of felt like it would be Mr. Sinister. And it very well could still just be Mr. Sinister. But after episode 5, I did catch myself wondering, well, who sent the Sentinel? Where did that come from? And as someone who has read a lot of X-Men comics, is familiar with a lot of different villains that they have that all could maybe kind of do this, I did want to just make a video where I run through some of them. But let's just say I have one theory for a villain that could be pulling all the strings that I think is interesting that I haven't seen anywhere else online, like on Twitter or anything like that. We're just gonna go through everybody that could be doing this, and we'll say it's in order of likelihood. So the least likely person, top of the list, is all the women, because specifically Cable says he did this or something. He uses the word he. So there's not a ton of women that would be doing this, especially since Madeline Pryor's out of the question. And by out of the question, I mean she gets vaporized by this, but we already did a Madeline Pryor story. So Cassandra Nova is the obvious example, because Cassandra Nova in the comics was the character who sent the Wild Sentinels to Genosha. And maybe Cable saying he is just trying to, throw us off his scent. Maybe the he is Professor X. And that's the twist on this story, is Professor X is going to come back as an evil Cassandra Nova type. I don't know, probably not. But the fact that Cable said he does close a couple of doors. Mystique is another door. Although again, this does not seem like the kind of thing Mystique would do. Although I do think people pointed out it's very possible that Mystique is currently hiding in the episodes as Val Cooper, and I do think that's probable at this point, just because of Val Cooper's reaction to Magneto saying that Rogue was going to be Queen of Genosha or whatever that position was going to be. She does make a very concerned what? And I don't think Val Cooper cares about any of that. If anything, based on what we know about Val Cooper, she'd be like, all right, cool, well, that's better than nothing. But instead she's like, oh no, not you and Rogue. So I don't know, it just feels like that's got to be what that is. Also, just where is Mystique if she's not here? I don't know where she ends in the animated series if she, gets killed. But it's a tough, Mystique is tough to kill. So I have a feeling she's still kicking, no matter what it is. But I don't think she would program an amazing Sentinel to kill everybody. And just so we can be clear, the Wild Sentinel can be its own thing, right? That as a thing, it just is, we've got Master Mold, we've got Sentinels that are somewhat sentient, or they can work on their own. So you could say just a Master Mold, came to life, the one maybe that they found in the first episode, and it had a brother, and that brother started making bug parts and little Sentinels and took all that stuff over to Genosha. It's possible. And I do think that's part of the picture, I guess. The other question about characters that could be doing this, I don't think it's going to end up secretly being Guy Ritchie, who they fully captured already when the show started. And I don't think it's going to be Trask, since he doesn't really seem like he knew what was going on. I think maybe if anything he's being played, or that's part of it, but I don't think he's the mastermind behind all of this. If for no other reason than I feel like the X-Men show, X-Men the Animated Series, did plenty of Guy Ritchie stuff, and probably plenty of Trask stuff. I know it did at least some Trask stuff, but those characters were such a fixture of that show that setting them up here in the first episode, having them both lose, and then this, I don't know, it just doesn't feel that interesting. It's all right, I got my list here on my phone. So we got characters we think it should be. Cassandra Nova is off the list. Guy Ritchie Trask off the list. Let's look at, how about this one? The Adversary. Okay, so that big bird guy that attacked Storm in her vision, or whatever ended up actually happening in the end of Life Death Part 1. That is a villain who is responsible for killing all of the mutants, except not really, but the death of the mutant story is the one where the Adversary seems to have killed all of them, and then they have to start their new lives in the Outback era. That is a very famous era of X-Men comics. This doesn't totally feel like the adversary's bag. Honestly, like the adversary's like a shaman, kind of a mystical villain, and I just don't think makes a big Sentinel that is a bug is what they would do. We also don't really know what the adversary is all about. If he is specific to Forge and Storm storyline, like maybe the rest of the X-Men just will never meet him. I don't know, it kind of feels like there's going to be like magic villains like that and also technology villains. I feel like we're looking at a technology villain here. Okay, here's one, Nimrod. So we're looking at evil Sentinels, right? Like these are the wild Sentinels and Master Molds and all that stuff. But we got to talk about Nimrod, who is the ultimate Sentinel. He is this big pink dude and like indestructible kind of triangular Sentinel. His whole deal is you kill him, he will automatically repair himself and then come back without that weakness. And like Ultron sometimes does this. Doomsday, I think in DC Comics, technically has this power as well. He's like the end game of Sentinels, basically. He just played a big part in the Fall of Krakoa story. And in the Powers of 10 story, he's a character that's just going to be around. Like Nimrod is just a force of nature. He is indestructible. The best thing you can do is kind of delay him or something like that, because you can never fully kill him. Now, Nimrod did show up in X-Men the Animated Series, so I think Nimrod could come back. Like, I don't think they killed him, and even if they did, like, it doesn't need to have counted. But then I also think, like, well, why are we doing Nimrod stuff now? Yeah, like, he is the ultimate weapon. He would be better than the wild Sentinels at killing the mutants, and in fact, he would want to be killed by some of the mutants so that he would become invulnerable to those powers. You know what I mean? It's like, while he could be doing it, I just don't see the point if he's already kind of that. Like he's like if a Sentinel was also the Juggernaut, and it's like, well, that guy would just fight everybody then. It's about other characters that have been in this show before. We got Mr. Sinister. So Mr. Sinister, the plus for him, first of all, not a mutant, right? He's a human mutate. He was empowered by Apocalypse. While Nathaniel Essex is curious about mutants and mutation, he is not invested in its survival in the same way the characters like Magneto are. So he is a character who conceivably could want to do this, like could want to just wipe out all the mutants, especially because his whole deal, and I don't know how much of this holds true, but basically Cable was created usually by Mr. Sinister to be a weapon to kill Apocalypse. And that's true in established cartoon, right? Cable and Apocalypse fight. It was even in the intro the other day. So like, say Sinister believed that to kill the mutants and stop the rise of Apocalypse, you had to just destroy all of Genosha. Like maybe there's something there. Where would he get access to the Sentinels? I don't know, but I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility that he could get them, or he could like coordinate something like that. Especially with Madeline Pryor being on that X-Men team, he would know where to find them. I do think Mr. Sinister, especially next season where Madeline Pryor, Scott, and Morph are up to so much stuff. Like, of course, Mr. Sinister would have a lot to do. And Mr. Sinister was a part of that little vision that Madeline had that involved a Master Mold and the song that played. So like, it does feel like he is intertwined in this plot. However, he's already intertwined in this plot. So we don't need to come up with reasons why he's part of it. He's already here. The question is, would he have done this or not? And the answer is like, maybe. This does seem just a little bit above his pay grade. And the other thing with Mr. Sinister is he uses clones. He uses, you know, the Nasty Boys, or he would, you know, make an army of Madeline Pryors or something. Sentinels don't quite feel like his bag either. But I don't hate it, especially because Cable knows who this person is, right? Cable's like, he's coming, or he's here, or whatever he said. I should probably know this, but he said he's something. And Sinister is a person who is definitely on Cable's radar, and Cable would be worried about that. And that could explain why the genes both had some sort of activation when, you know, this all started, is because they could sense Mr. Sinister pulling a lever that was going to let the big wild Sentinel out. I don't know. Sinister feels like the obvious answer because he's been such a consistent X-Men villain, and in the animated series, he's played a big role, and he's already done a lot of stuff. My only thing is, I don't know. This and the Madeline Pryor Jean Grey thing seem to feel like they're on different levels. But let's look at Sinister's benefactor, Apocalypse. So Apocalypse, evil mutant, evil, you know, it's a relative term, but like, people have described him as the Thanos of X-Men. Like, I think that's fair. He's an ancient mutant who cares about one thing and one thing only, and that is Darwinian survival of the fittest, and, you know, our mutant kind should overtake humanity and only the strong will survive, and blah, blah, blah. That's usually his bit. Now, he is a mutant, and he has this really specific way of doing things. He uses the celestial technology that he kind of stole, And he has this horseman. Mutants usually, although sometimes it's not mutants, but field generals that Apocalypse either mind controls or makes a deal with, and they work for him, and they usually are empowered in some way. Now, people have suggested there's a very good chance that Remy could come back as Death, one of the horsemen, because he's done that before, and that would make sense. And I do think Apocalypse stuff will come up again. I remember Wolverine, when Madeline was giving birth, she says, like, he's here, and he's like, oh, Apocalypse. I think that's a funny joke, but also I do think Apocalypse is probably going to show up, especially because we're doing all this Cable stuff, Mr. Sinister stuff. Like, there's just too many connections to Apocalypse here. And obviously, Apocalypse was a big part of the animated series. Even if you didn't watch the show, you'd recognize he's in that picture that goes around on the internet all the time with Rogue's butt in it. Like, that's an Apocalypse episode. He's in Stonehenge, a magical place. In the comics, it's a magical place. And then in the show, it's like his secret lair is underneath Stonehenge. I don't know, man. Stonehenge is weird. Then the question again, why would Apocalypse send a wild Sentinel to destroy Genosha? Why wouldn't he send his horsemen? I don't know. Maybe he wanted to make some new horsemen. Maybe this is how he does it. And then, like, you could say, well, maybe what he wants, because what did he get out of this? A lot of the people of Genosha were killed, and like a lot of the mutants on Genosha were killed, but certain ones survived, and maybe that's it. Maybe he saw Genosha and said, oh, this is too comfortable. Mutants should not be living like this, throwing little dance parties with Exodus. They should be conquering and proving how strong they are, so this will really, force them in there. Possible, again, I think that if any other situation like that happened, even if it was just like bombs went off, I'd be like, oh, maybe that was Apocalypse. But the fact that it's a Sentinel just doesn't feel quite right for him. Other characters, some people have suggested maybe Magneto. I don't know. I take a lot of what Magneto's doing in this show at face value, especially when it comes to wanting to have sex with Rogue. Like, he has not been incredibly subtle about that. In the same way that I don't think he has a secret master plan to, like, fake his death, fake a Sentinel invasion, kill everybody. I mean, like, he could do it. He totally could. He could come up at the end of the episode and be like, it's me, Magneto. I planned all along to have the Sentinels massacre Genosha because that was the only way I could get mutant kind to believe that we needed to fight against the humans. I guess in my heart, I do feel like Magneto, the character Magneto, would genuinely do this based on how Charles told him to. If Charles told him, do my dream this way, he would at least try. And I don't think he's given it a full try, especially because, like, he did that whole speech at the UN and it seemed to go okay. Like, I guess, and Magneto does traditionally like Genosha. Like, in the comics, Magneto was a big part of why Genosha became a mutant nation. So I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Could he? Absolutely. I think we've seen too much Magneto so far for him to have planned this together. Like, I do think we'll get, I think he's not dead, for the reason a lot of people have said, which I had not thought of when I made my first video about this episode, is that maybe Leech depowered him so that he could sneak away into the sewer like Morlocks know how to do. That would make a lot of sense. I don't know how he would survive that explosion, but I'm sure they figured it out. And like that works. Like, I don't know, apparently the mutant Tommy, the one who's got the rainbow hair, can flatten herself, so like a sheet of paper. I don't know if she can do that with all of them, but like, maybe that's what they did. I don't know. If they have a teleporter in there, they could probably teleport away. But like, I do think that Magneto will heroically show up and save the day and be like, oh, I wasn't dead. I was actually hiding with the Morlocks. I don't think that he's the bad guy. I will say one other one who it could be, but I don't think it is. I don't think they've done nearly enough work here, especially with this character, is like Dark Beast, the Beast who works for Apocalypse. Again, like, if this wasn't Apocalypse directly, it could be an evil version of Beast. A, I don't think we're gonna do another secret evil version of the X-Men as on the X-Men. And B, like, I don't know. It's just, who cares? The only difference with him is he is also like, he would have to do this. Like, if Dark Beast wanted to set up this massacre, he couldn't just have his horsemen do it. He would find Sentinels and reprogram them or something. All right, so the top two. Number two. This is most likely, probably, is Bastion. Bastion is a figure who, and this is not like me trying to go Easter egg, and like you see the picture and you're like, that guy's wearing an interesting shirt. In Forge's like basement, where he has a beautiful picture of Strong Guy and his friends, he also has a picture of, I forget who, it's like him and another scientist standing next to a guy who you can't see, who's wearing like a purple and black onesie, so like not just clothes, and like we know that Forge has worked with the government and done stuff. So there is a figure who exists in the government sometimes, but he's also like the human Sentinel hybrid named Bastion. He is not a little robot that whistles and has a friend that's a bird. He is mean. He's got white hair, and yeah, he's like a super Sentinel. I don't know who's more powerful. I think he's like part Nimrod too. I feel like Nimrod is the pure version of this. Like Nimrod is probably the more dangerous, but because Bastion is not all robot, he can pass for human. That does make him pretty dangerous. So I think there could definitely be a, mutant extermination thing that Bastion set up or something. My only thing with this is, why do it here? It does feel like the one problem with this whole thing, if you are a villain who is genuinely trying to destroy mutant kind, I do think this is going to get him a lot of sympathy that you probably didn't want them to have. But maybe, like, I think if you're someone like Bastion and you want to discredit mutants, what you do is you find one mutant who is dangerous, who's just like a kid who explodes or something, and you just throw that kid into the middle of somewhere, and then everybody blames that kid and is, oh, mutants are too dangerous, and you go, see, I didn't want to, but now I must, But like sending a big evil Sentinel to kill all of them, like either you think you're going to kill all of them that day, or I don't know, you just think they'll all surrender, which like maybe they would, but I don't know, that doesn't feel quite right either. I do think like he is probably the most likely option just because they've teased him, and I don't believe Bastion showed up in the original cartoon, whereas like I said, Nimrod did, Master Molds did, obviously. A lot of the Sentinel characters have already been here, except I think Bastion. Bastion's also a character who like doesn't get that much exposure compared to like Apocalypse, say. He's not been in every incarnation of the movies and shows and stuff like that. So like Bastion, it's like, yeah, he could be doing something like this. We could rewrite big parts of his backstory to make him fit into this continuity. So, okay, those are all the ones that I think it probably is. It's probably one of them. It's probably Bastion. I would say like out of all of them, Bastion most likely, let's say Sinister second most likely. That's pretty much it. Those are the only two that I think it'll end up being. However, I do have another guy, a character that I think could be behind all of this, and it would be really interesting, and I think it would help the show generally, because I do think part of the problem is, and this isn't really a problem because I think the show's great, we have certain plot elements that do feel somewhat disconnected, and I think in the finale we're going to bring all that together, right? Obviously Storm and Forge will be back, and hey, if Forge worked with Bastion, then that already helps. Boom, we're a little bit closer. And maybe Bastion's working as part of a team, like maybe there's an evil triumvirate, like a Orcus, or I don't even know what you would call them. There's all kinds of names for like what the evil people or like robots are. But if we need one human villain, because there's a couple of them that like it technically could be, right? Senator Kelly, Guy Rich, Grayton Creed. I know he gets a lot of play in the original animated series, so it's probably not him. I don't remember if Stryker's in the original animated series or not. Obviously, Guy Rich is. Cameron Hodge, I don't know if he's in it yet. But like, if you want a human villain, we have those guys. Like, those guys exist. However, there's another character, could be a character we've established in this show who hates mutants, would seem to have the resources to do this, and in the comics has not exactly done it, but has been part of kind of how it kind of happens. And that is Sunspot's dad, Emmanuel DaCosta. So this character is a member of the Hellfire Club, traditionally. He's not, I don't think he's like born into it. I think he works his way up and eventually becomes like a, rook or general or whatever they call themselves. But he is not a mutant. He's in the Illuminati Secret Society part of the Hellfire Club, because for a while they were just that, Illuminati guys. They were not also mutants. Sebastian Shaw led a takeover of the Hellfire Club with like Leland and Emma and all those guys, and then it became the mutant group. But there was a point where it was like, oh, is it going to be all mutants, or is it going to be all humans, or what? Like, I could see characters like Emmanuel DaCosta, Donald Pierce, maybe some of the human, or even like we could even do some of the vampire or like werewolf ones, but just the non-mutant members of the Hellfire Club getting together and doing this. I do think the fact that Sunspot is here, so prominently featured, does kind of make me go like, maybe there's a reason. And one of those reasons could be that we wanted to have him be the son of the villain who is going to show up later. And we want him to have this whole thing about like, oh, I always wanted to be a mutant, but I can't. I was never able to reveal myself to my parents. It's like, everybody's like, come on, man, be cool. Parents are cool. It'll be fine. And he's like, no, they really won't. And everybody's like, oh, I don't know, man. This kid, he just doesn't get it. But like, maybe he does get it. And he's trying to tell you guys something and you're not listening. I also think it's not nothing that one of the people that seemed to die during this attack, or at least get severely injured, was Sebastian Shaw. This is the first time we've seen the Hellfire Club this season, but like maybe this is part of a power play. And specifically, like Shaw and Emma were on this council, so it was like, well, we'll get those two guys, And then once they're out of the picture, you know, we'll obviously use our club to destroy all mutants because we hate all mutants, but also then we'll just have the Hellfire Club and that'll be great for us. I don't think we get through this season without seeing Roberto's dad. And I could totally see a world where that is like the Spider-Man meets the Vulture moment where it's like, oh no, this villain that we keep hearing about, it's his dad. Like that just seems like it could be interesting. Like I say, smart money's still on Bastion. I would say Bastion, Sinister, probably 1 and 2. But if we wanted the antagonist, who we're not incredibly familiar with, right, has not already been the villain in a bazillion of these stories, but does have precedent for being a bad guy in the comics, specifically Hellfire Club stuff, which we just got introduced to already, and who we've been talked about, like everybody's been talking about how dangerous this guy is. I think it's a pretty good choice. You know, we'll see, but that is my like one left field guess. So let me know in the comments what you think, who you think sent the Sentinels, what you thought of the episode, and what other stuff you expect to see, because it really is like, I think Life Death is the next one. There's one more episode after that, and then a 3-part finale called Tolerance is Extinction. So we don't know what that means, although that does seem like, you know, that would be like the mantra of a villain who is like, if we tolerate them, they'll destroy us. And I don't think, like Bastion could say that, I guess, but like someone, you know, a more like I think one of the things that I like about the Roberto's dad thing is he is a person, like just a human, as opposed to like a super weapon or whatever. He's just like a guy. And I do like it when in the X-Men stories, who they're going up against is just a charismatic, hateful guy. Because that is interesting, because those figures exist in real life, whereas the super laser, you know, flying monster guys don't. So let me know what you think in the comments. We'll check back in with this in a couple days. My light just went out, so that means the video is done.